Hey everyone, it's Bigfoot. Today we're going to talk about injury prevention on the trail. Well, one of the most common reasons why hikers have to get off the trail is because they sustain some sort of injury. Some of these injuries might just take them out a little while and they have to recover, and unfortunately some ends their through hike. Now, I through hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2016 and I had to do it in a very short time frame, 100 days. Now, I was able to do this because I was smart and I took care of my body. Well, I want to start off by talking about how I took care of my body. Before I get into that though, I do want to put a disclaimer out that I am not an expert in this field. I don't have a degree in health and fitness. The things I talk about are things that I researched before I got on the trail, seemed to work out well. I tested them out on my pre-hikes and they ended up working out really well for me while I was actually on the trail. So, having said that, let's talk about the first thing, stretching. I stretched every day before I started my hike and then when I finished my hike. I had 5 different stretches that I use on the trail. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about each one vaguely. I'm going to put a picture up of what the stretch looks like. And if you want to know more information, you can Google these stretches and you can find out all the information that you'd like for them. There are some different variations to these stretches as well. Now, I would hold each stretch for 20 to 30 seconds, and there was 5 different stretches that I used on the trail. The first stretch is the quadricep stretch. One key on this one, for a more natural stretch, you do not want to grab your leg with the opposite arm. So, for example, if I'm stretching my right leg, I'm going to hold my right leg with my right arm. Then with my free hand, I'll use that to grab up against a tree or somewhere to hold me up so I don't lose my balance. All right, then I stretched my inner thighs. Now I did this both standing up as well as on the ground. As you can see here, here's an example of how I stretched while I was standing up, both stretching my right side, then my left side. And then on the ground, this is a demonstration of how I stretch my inner thighs on the ground. Anything that I did do on the ground, I would sit on my Thermarest Z seat. Highly recommend getting a Thermarest Z seat or some sort of foam padding. It's great because not only can you use it while you're stretching on the ground so your butt doesn't get wet, or if it's wet on the ground, you want to sit down on the ground, but just it's nice to have a little bit of a cushion between your tush and the ground when you're out there hiking. It does get a little old sitting on rocks and sitting on logs and things like that, but highly recommend. Now after I finished my inner thigh stretch while I was standing up still, I would find something to grab onto, typically a tree, and I would complete 15 leg swing stretches for each leg. As you can see in the picture here, I would do 15 full rotations, full swings of my right leg and then again my left leg. Now when I finished that, I would then get on the ground, I would do that inner thigh stretch that I talked about just before this stretch, and then I would complete everything with a hamstring stretch. With the hamstring stretch, I would always do this lying on the ground on top of my Z seat, and I would grab my upper leg, pull it towards me, trying to keep my leg as straight as possible, and try to get to as close to a 90-degree form as I could. Now, there are lots of different ways that you can do all these different types of stretches. This is just what I did. What I did see some folks do on the trail was use their bear bag rope and stretch their hamstrings using their bear bag rope, just like is shown right now. Now, that completes the 5 stretches that I used on the trail. This is what, again, worked for me. If I did this over again, there is one stretch that I found from others seem to be pretty helpful on the trail, and that's the straight leg calf stretch. Shown here is how you would complete this stretch. Basically, you're going to be pushing back your heel into the ground, keep your leg straight, and then you'll lean to your right or lean to your left, depending on which calf that you're stretching. But that wraps up all the techniques that I used when I was stretching on the trail. Again, I would hold each stretch for 20 to 30 seconds. I would always do this before I started my hike for the day, and most of the time I always do it when I finish my hiking for the day. All right, the next couple topics are things that I've already talked about in other videos. I'm going to link those videos in the detail below, but I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about them. The first is lightening your pack load. My recommendation for base weight is below 20 pounds. I think this is totally achievable without sacrificing comfort or safety. Now, everyone's going to be a little different, but I totally believe that you can do this without spending a ton of money. I was able to prove this by doing a video on this alone where I spent under $1,000. I was able to get all the essentials needed for a 3-season backpacking through hike with only a base weight of just above 14 pounds. So it can be done. Trekking poles. Guys, you need these things. I don't care how old you are or how young you are, how physically fit that you are, or how out of shape that you are. These things have so many functional uses. The number one thing though, it's going to help distribute the weight that is impacting your lower body, and it's going to distribute them to your poles. And this is the reason why I was able to finish my through hike in 100 days with no injuries and with no pain and very little soreness. So these things work. I did a video on proper techniques. Now, my way that I held the trekking poles is a little unconventional, but it has the same idea of keeping the weight off my lower body. But these things work. If you have never tried hiking with trekking poles, try it out. There is more than enough data out there that tells you that these things have so much value, and for 10 to 20 ounces of extra weight, totally worth it. All right, a couple last things about just taking care of your body. One of the things that I use, and I really had to use, was Body Glide. Strongly recommend bringing something that's going to help prevent chafing from your inner thighs. You know, I met some hikers out there that went through some big struggles with this, a lot of pain, and some of them had to take a little bit of time off for their inner thighs to heal. I can't run without this, I can't hike without this, but this was something that, again, just helped my body heal and recover. All right, wrapping up, just kind of taking care of your body and some of the other things that you can do. I didn't do this, but a lot of hikers did, and that was getting knee braces and insoles. Now, because I didn't do this, I'm not going to recommend any knee braces or insoles. There is one that I saw on the trail quite a bit. I'll put a link to that below, but do your own research, and really it kind of depends on what works for you. But I will tell you, the folks that use the knee braces and the insoles, a lot of them were very, very happy once they found the ones that worked well for them. And this was something that just helped take care of their body, help prevent some of the injury, and also help with comfortability as well. All right, let's talk about hiking smart. First thing that comes to mind for me when I think about hiking smart is hike what you can handle. There's no need to start off doing 20, 25 miles a day in the very beginning of your hike. Most people that do this can't handle it unless if they were trained and practiced and had their trail legs before they got on the trail, but most don't. Most are going to start doing somewhere between 8 to 10 miles in the very beginning, and some even less than that. So you don't need to over push it. Most of the time when you do this, that's when you're going to start having lots of issues with injury or lots of issues of just being really, really sore. Now the next thing is avoid doing something really stupid. You're going to meet a ton of people out there and you're going to have a lot of fun, and there are lots of different influences on the trail, and there are things that I saw other hikers do that I don't know that I would be doing the same thing. And you know, whether that's jumping off a really tall bridge or whatever it might be, but don't do something that's going to put your safety at risk. And I saw this happen sometimes, you know, especially you put a lot of money and a lot of time, a lot of resources in planning, preparing to hike the Appalachian Trail, and it would just really stink if you got hurt doing something really stupid. And the last thing is being smart when you descend. Now, there are going to be times on the trail that you're going to come to some really steep descents. The best advice I can give is take your time, be careful. When you start your through hike, you're not going to experience a lot of these steeper descents in the very beginning. You'll have, you know, some just kind of here or there. The first one I would say is probably Blood Mountain. But as you get further north, you start to hit some really steep descents, like in the White Mountains. And the nice part is, if you're northbound, you'll develop this technique, your technique of how to descend, how to ascend, and just your techniques for hiking, what works for you. And anyway, you'll have all of those miles to perfect that technique before you get to really the last section, which is the most difficult and the most dangerous. And when you get to that part, you'll have ways and techniques of being able to safely descend off of some of these mountains. For me, sometimes I would have to get down on my butt and do kind of a butt slide on certain parts. Sometimes I would have to toss my trekking poles down 10 feet so I had 2 free hands. And sometimes I would turn around and kind of like you're walking down a ladder to descend during certain parts just because it was so dangerous. So, really take your time, be careful, be smart when it comes to your descents. But I will tell you, there are some parts in the trail that are really dangerous. And if you don't know what you're doing or you try to willy-nilly it, you could get seriously injured. All right, wrapping up with just a couple of last thoughts. You need to listen to your body, and you need to make sure that you give it time to recover. This might mean that you have to take an unexpected zero, maybe a couple of zeros, but it's important for your body to recover. And I will tell you, I had different techniques of how I was able to do this without taking zeros in the trail. And you can check out some of my other videos about that, but it's really important to make sure that you're listening to your body and giving it what it needs. Now, one of those needs is rest. Most hikers out there are probably sleeping somewhere on average about 10 hours a night. Most folks usually go to bed once the sun goes down, which is somewhere between 9 to 9:30 at night. And most of the time, folks aren't waking up until 5:30, 6:30 in the morning. But I'd say on average, most hikers are sleeping about 10 hours, and that's probably what your body needs to really help rest and recover. All right, well, that wraps it up. These techniques I covered in the video today are things that worked well for me. I'm not saying that's going to work for every single person, but I think at least it's a starting point. You need to be smart, you need to listen to your body, but there are things out there that you can use to your advantage that can really help. I talked about lightening your load, I talked about stretching, we talked about the importance of trekking poles, and just being smart. So I hope this was helpful for everyone, and I'm excited because in about a week from today, just over a week from today, we're going to be back on the Appalachian Trail. I hope to see you out there. Stay tuned for my next sighting, and remember to always follow Bigfoot.